The cargo ship Starbound moved quietly through space, its engines humming with a steady rhythm that had become like a heartbeat to the crew. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, watching the stars drift past the main window. He was a tall man with graying hair at his temples and calm blue eyes that had seen many years of peaceful space travel. "How are we doing on time, Amy?" Jake asked his pilot. Amy Rodriguez looked up from her controls. She was young, maybe 30, with dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. Her fingers moved quickly over the navigation panel. "We're right on. Schedule, Captain. Should reach the Kepler system in about 6 hours. Jake nodded and walked over to the cargo manifest on his desk. The list was long but simple. Medical supplies, food packets, water purification tablets, and basic tools. Nothing exciting, nothing valuable enough to attract trouble. Just the kind of supplies that outer colony worlds desperately needed. "Pete, how are the engines running?" Jake called to the engineering station. Pete Williams was a big man with strong hands that seemed to fix anything they touched. He wiped grease from his fingers with an old cloth. "Running smooth as silk, Captain. These old engines might not be pretty, but they're reliable." The fourth member of their crew, Lisa Davis, sat at the communications desk. She was quiet and thoughtful, the kind of person who listened more than she talked. Her job was to keep them connected to the rest of the galaxy, monitoring radio channels and handling official messages. "Any word from the colonies?" Jake asked her. Lisa shook her head. "Nothing urgent, just the usual requests for supply updates. Though," she paused and looked at a message on her screen. "There have been some reports about increased pirate activity in this sector." Jake frowned. Pirates were always a concern for cargo ships, but the Starbound wasn't carrying anything worth stealing. Medical supplies had no black market value, and their ship itself was old and slow. "What kind of pirate activity?" he asked. "Mostly attacks on mining ships and luxury transports," Lisa replied. "Ships carrying valuable metals or wealthy passengers. Nothing like us." Amy turned in her chair. "Should we change course? Take the, longer route through the Terra system?" Jake thought about it. The longer route would add 3 days to their journey. 3 days that the people on the outer colonies would have to wait for medicine and clean water. 3 days that could mean the difference between life and death for some sick child or injured worker. No, he decided. We stick to the plan. We're a humanitarian vessel. Even pirates have some limits. The Starbound was not a beautiful ship. It was old, with dented metal walls and patches where repairs had been made over the years, but it was home to Jake and his crew. They had been working together for almost 5 years now, carrying supplies to places that bigger, fancier ships wouldn't bother with. Jake had chosen this work after retiring from a different life. He didn't talk much about his past, but his crew knew he had military experience. Sometimes, when he thought no one was watching, they caught him staring at the stars with an expression that suggested he had seen things he wished he could forget. The bridge was quiet for a while, filled only with the soft beeping of instruments and the distant hum of the engines. This was how Jake liked it: peaceful, calm, predictable. After so many years of chaos and conflict, he found comfort in the simple routine of hauling cargo from one place to another. "Captain," Lisa said suddenly, "I'm picking up something on the long-range scanners." Jake walked over to her station. "What kind of something?" "Multiple ships, maybe 10 or 12. They're moving in formation about 2 light hours ahead of us." "Could be a trade convoy," Amy suggested. Pete looked up from his work. "Or a patrol group. The Galactic Council has been increasing security in this area." Jake studied the scanner display. The ships were too far away to identify. but their formation looked military. Keep monitoring them. Let me know if they change course or try to contact us. Hours passed peacefully. The crew took turns eating lunch in the small galley behind the bridge. The food was simple, packaged meals that could be heated quickly, but it was enough. Jake had learned long ago that comfort came from the people around you, not from fancy food or expensive furniture. As they got closer to the Kepler system, the scanner contacts became clearer. The ships ahead of them were definitely not human. Their design was angular and aggressive, with too many weapons for a peaceful mission. "Those aren't council ships," Amy said, studying the scanner data. Lisa checked her database. "The computer says they match Vraxian designs. But that doesn't make sense. The Vraxians aren't supposed to be in this sector." Jake felt a cold feeling in his stomach. The Vraxians were known throughout the galaxy as raiders and bullies. They took what they wanted and destroyed what they couldn't use. They had no respect for galactic law or humanitarian missions. "Are they moving toward us?" he asked. Amy checked her instruments. "Not yet. They seem to be holding position near the main trade route." "Like they're waiting for something," Pete said quietly. Jake made a decision. "Lisa, send out a standard identification signal. Let them know who we are and what we're carrying." Lisa's fingers moved over her controls. A few minutes later, she looked up with worry in her eyes. "Message sent, but... Captain, they're responding." "Put it on speaker." The voice that came through the communication system was harsh and electronic, filtered through alien vocal cords and translation software. "Human vessel, you will stop your engines and prepare to be boarded." Jake picked up the microphone. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the cargo vessel Starbound. We are carrying medical supplies and humanitarian aid under Galactic Council protection. We request safe passage." There was a pause, then alien laughter. "Humans and their rules. You will surrender your cargo and your ship. This is not a request." Jake looked at his crew. Amy's hands were tight on her controls. Pete had stopped working and was staring at the communication panel. Lisa was already checking emergency procedures on her computer. "We are a protected humanitarian vessel," Jake said into the microphone. "Attacking us would be a violation of galactic law." More laughter. "Your laws mean nothing here, human. You have 1 hour to comply." The communication channel went dead. Jake set down the microphone and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 12 alien warships were waiting to take everything they had worked for. The medical supplies that could save hundreds of lives would be stolen or destroyed. But Jake Morrison was not the kind of man to give up without a fight. The Vraxian ships came into view an hour later, and they were bigger than the scanner had suggested. Each one was twice the size of the Starbound, with dark metal hulls covered in weapon ports and armor plating. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never met anything they couldn't kill. Jake stood on the bridge, watching the alien fleet arrange itself around his ship. Amy kept her hands on the controls, ready to move if needed, but they all knew the Starbound was too slow to run from military vessels. 12 ships confirmed, Lisa reported from her station. All armed. The largest one is directly ahead of us. The largest Vraxian ship was a monster of black metal and glowing red lights. It looked like something built for war and nothing else. Weapon turrets tracked the Starbound as it approached, and Jake could see smaller ships launching from its hangar bays. "They're hailing us again," Lisa said. Jake picked up the microphone. Before he could speak, the alien voice filled the bridge. "Human ship. I am War Commander Zektar of the Vraxian Raider Fleet. You will surrender immediately or be destroyed. Jake had dealt with bullies before. In his experience, they usually backed down when faced with someone who wouldn't scare easily. War Commander, this is Captain Morrison. We are carrying medical supplies to colony worlds. Surely your people understand the need to help the sick and injured. There was a pause, then something that might have been alien laughter. The Vraxians take what we need and destroy what we cannot use. Your cargo will serve us well. Our cargo is medicine and food, Jake said. What use is that to a military fleet? Medicine can be sold. Food can feed our crews. Your ship can be scrapped for metal. Everything has value to those who know how to use it. Amy turned in her chair and whispered, Captain, I'm reading more ships on the edge of the system. This isn't just a raiding party. This is a whole fleet. Jake felt his heart sink. A small group of pirates might be reasoned with or scared off, but a full military fleet meant the Vraxians were planning something big. The Starbound had wandered into the middle of a major operation. War Commander, Jake said into the microphone, attacking a humanitarian vessel is a serious crime under galactic law. The Council will... The Council is far away. The alien voice cut him off. And humans are weak. Your species talks of peace and law, while others take what they want by force. This is why the Vraxians will rule the galaxy. Pete stood up from his engineering station. His face was red with anger. Captain, let me tell them what I think about their galactic empire. Jake held up a hand to quiet him. Losing his temper wouldn't help anyone. What exactly do you want from us? Everything. Your cargo, your ship, your crew if they prove useful. In return, I will allow you to live as slaves rather than dying in space. Lisa's fingers were flying over her controls. She looked up at Jake and nodded. He understood. She was preparing to send out a distress signal. That's not much of a deal, Jake said, trying to buy time. It is the only deal you will receive. Your ship is old and slow. Your weapons are minimal. You have 4 crew members against an entire fleet. Accept reality. Jake looked around the bridge. Amy was studying her navigation controls, probably looking for any possible escape route. Pete was checking the ship's defensive systems, though. They all knew the Starbound's weapons were designed to scare off small pirates, not fight a military fleet. Lisa was ready to send their distress call the moment he gave the word. These were good people. They had spent years bringing help to places that needed it most. They didn't deserve to die in empty space because some alien warlord wanted to steal medicine from sick children. I need time to discuss this with my crew, Jake said. You have 30 minutes. Then we begin boarding procedures. The communication channel went dead. Jake set down the microphone and looked at his crew. Well, he asked. The engines can't outrun them, Amy said. They're military ships with military engines. We might as well try to outrun lightning. Our weapons won't scratch their armor, Pete added. We've got mining lasers and emergency flares. They've got plasma cannons and missile launchers. Lisa looked up from her communications panel. But, Captain, we're not completely helpless. I can send out a distress signal on multiple frequencies. If there are any council ships in the area, do it, Jake said immediately. Lisa's hands moved over her controls. Sending now on all emergency channels. Jake knew the chances of rescue were small. Space was vast, and the nearest council patrol could be days away, but maybe someone would hear them. Maybe someone would care that a humanitarian ship was under attack. The Vraxian ships moved closer, forming a perfect circle around the Starbound. Jake could see armored soldiers moving around inside the enemy vessels, preparing to board his ship. They looked like insects in metal suits, with too many arms and heads that moved in ways that hurt to watch. "Captain," Amy said quietly, "what do we do if no help comes?" Jake thought about the cargo holds full of medicine. He thought about the colony worlds where children were waiting for clean water and antibiotics. He thought about the years he had spent trying to live peacefully after a military career he rarely discussed. "We fight," he said simply. Pete laughed, but there was no humor in it. 4 people against a fleet? That's not a fight, Captain. That's suicide. Maybe, Jake agreed. But sometimes fighting a battle you can't win is better than surrendering to people who don't deserve to win. Lisa looked up from her communications panel. "Distress signal is transmitting on all frequencies. If anyone's listening, they'll hear us." Jake nodded. "Good. Keep sending it until they jam our communications or board the ship." "Captain," Amy said, "there's something else. I've been studying the Vraxian formation. They're not just here to rob us. This looks like a staging area for a major attack." Jake studied the enemy ships through the main window. Amy was right. The fleet was arranged in a pattern that suggested they were preparing to move deeper into human space. The Starbound had stumbled into something much bigger than a simple piracy operation. "They're planning to attack the colonies," Jake realized. "Which means they can't let us go," Pete said grimly. "Even if we surrender, they'll kill us to keep their plans secret." The communication panel crackled to life again. "Human ship, your time is almost up. Prepare to be boarded." Jake picked up the microphone one last time. "War Commander, I want you to understand something. You're making a mistake. We're not just a cargo ship. We're a human ship. That means something." Alien laughter filled the bridge. "It means you are weak and your species will be enslaved." "No," Jake said calmly. "It means you should have listened to our warnings." He cut the communication channel and turned to his crew. "Lisa, is that distress signal still transmitting?" "Yes, Captain. Broadcasting on all frequencies." Jake smiled for the first time since the Vraxians had appeared. "Good. Now let's see what happens when someone decides to mess with a human ship." Jake Morrison had been a soldier before he became a cargo ship captain. He knew the importance of clear communication in dangerous situations. Sometimes the right words at the right time could prevent a war. Sometimes they could save lives. And sometimes they could serve as evidence that you had tried to do things the peaceful way. "Lisa, open a channel on all frequencies. Emergency broadcast." Lisa's fingers moved quickly over her controls. "Channel open, Captain. You're broadcasting to everything within 3 light years." Jake picked up the microphone and spoke in a calm, clear voice. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel, Starbound. We are currently under attack by Vraxian raiders in violation of galactic law. We are a humanitarian vessel carrying medical supplies to outer colony worlds. Our cargo consists of antibiotics, water purification tablets, surgical equipment, and emergency food supplies." He paused, making sure his words were being recorded clearly. This message would travel far beyond the immediate area, carried by automated relay stations throughout the galaxy. To War Commander Zektar and the Vraxian fleet currently surrounding. "Our vessel, this is your only warning. Stand down immediately and allow us to continue our humanitarian mission. We are protected under galactic law as a medical supply vessel. Any attack on our ship constitutes an act of war against humanity and violates 17 separate council treaties." Jake could see the Vraxian ships moving closer, their weapon systems charging to full power. The largest ship, Zektar's command vessel, was so close now that he could see individual weapon turrets tracking his ship. "We are not a military vessel. We are not carrying weapons or valuable cargo. We are carrying medicine for sick children and clean water for families who have nothing. If you attack us, you are attacking the very idea that some things are more important than profit and power." Amy watched her scanner displays, tracking the enemy ships. "Captain, they're deploying boarding pods. Looks like they're getting ready to—" Jake held up a hand to quiet her. He wasn't finished with his message. "This broadcast is being recorded and transmitted throughout known space. Every word is being captured by Council monitoring stations and will be used as evidence of any crimes committed here. War Commander Zektar, your actions in the next few minutes will determine whether the galaxy remembers you as a pirate who respected some boundaries or as a monster who attacked medical supplies meant for dying children." Jake took a deep breath. The next part of his message was the most important. "To any vessels receiving this transmission, be aware that the Vraxian fleet is not here just to attack one cargo ship. Our scans indicate a major military buildup in this sector. This appears to be preparation for a large-scale assault on human colony worlds. If you value peace and stability in this region, you will take immediate action." The communication panel crackled, and War Commander Zektar's voice filled the bridge. "Enough words, human. Your threats mean nothing. The Vraxians fear no human laws." Jake smiled coldly. "They're not threats, War Commander. They're warnings. And you're about to learn the difference. You speak of medicine and children as if these things matter in war. The strong take what they want. The weak make excuses and cry for help." "Is that what you think this is?" Jake asked. "Crying for help? What else could it be? You are 4 humans on an old cargo ship. I command 50 warships and 10,000 warriors. You have no weapons, no armor, no hope of escape. Your message is the desperate pleading of the defeated." Jake looked around the bridge. His crew was listening too, every word, and he could see something changing in their expressions. The fear was still there, but it was being replaced by something harder, something that War Commander Zektar didn't understand. "You know what I find interesting about bullies?" Jake said into the microphone. "They always assume their victims are alone. You are alone. This sector is empty except for my fleet. Space is never as empty as it looks, War Commander. You might want to check your long-range sensors." There was a pause. Jake could imagine the alien commander ordering his crew to scan the area more carefully. What they would find would surprise them. "I see nothing but empty space and your pathetic ship," Zektar finally said, but his voice sounded less confident. "Then you're not looking hard enough. Lisa, has our message been acknowledged?" Lisa checked her instruments. "Yes, Captain. I'm receiving confirmation signals from multiple sources. Our location and situation have been confirmed and logged." Jake A. spoke into the microphone again. "War Commander, let me explain something about humans. We're a social species. We don't travel alone if we can help it. And we never, ever abandon our own." More empty words. "You have no fleet, no weapons, no allies in this sector." "Are you sure about that?" Jake asked. "Because I used to serve on ships a lot bigger than this one. Ships with crews a lot larger than 4 people. Ships that take threats against human civilians very seriously." Pete had moved to a different control panel and was working on something Jake couldn't see. Amy was still watching her scanners, but now she was looking for something specific. Lisa continued monitoring communications, but she was smiling now. "You were military," Zektar said. "It wasn't a question. Once upon a time. but that was years ago. Now I just haul medical supplies to places that need them. Much more peaceful work, much safer. Jake paused. Usually, your past means nothing. You are here now, surrounded by my fleet, with no hope of rescue. Rescue? Jake laughed. Who said anything about rescue? The communication channel went quiet. Jake could picture the war commander trying to figure out what he was missing. Bullies were used to their victims being afraid. They didn't know how to handle someone who seemed almost amused by the situation. Lisa, are you still transmitting our warning? Jake asked. Broadcasting on all frequencies, Captain. The message is being picked up by relay stations throughout the sector. Good. Make sure everyone knows exactly what happened here. Jake picked up the microphone again. War Commander Zektar, you now have exactly 5 minutes to withdraw your fleet from this system. After that, I can't guarantee your safety. Alien laughter filled the bridge. You threaten me? You and your cargo ship threaten the Vraxian fleet? Not me, Jake said calmly. Them. Amy looked up from her scanner display, and her expression had changed completely. The fear was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like relief. Captain, she said loudly enough for the microphone to pick up her words. I'm reading new contacts on long-range sensors. Big ones. Jake nodded. How big? Capital ship class, maybe bigger. And Captain? Amy smiled. They're coming in fast. Jake spoke into the microphone one last time. War Commander, I tried to warn you, I really did, but you chose to ignore the warnings. You chose to attack a human medical ship. You chose to threaten the lives of people carrying medicine to sick children. The bridge was quiet except for the sound of approaching engines, growing louder by the minute. Now you get to learn why that was the worst decision you ever made. The Vraxian attack came without warning. One moment Jake was talking to War Commander Zektar, and the next moment the Starbound was shaking as enemy weapons struck their hull. The lights flickered and alarm bells started ringing throughout. The ship! Hull breach in Cargo Bay 2! Pete shouted over the noise. I'm reading damage to the main engine coupling. Amy fought to keep the ship steady as more weapons fire hit them. They're not trying to destroy us. They're trying to disable our engines. Jake grabbed the edge of his captain's chair as another blast rocked the ship. They want us alive for questioning. Can we get the engines back online? Working on it. Pete was already running toward the engineering section. But Captain, if they keep hitting us like this, we won't have a ship left to rescue. Lisa's communication panel was crackling with static from the damaged systems. I'm losing contact with the relay stations. The attack is jamming our transmissions. Jake looked out the main window and saw Vraxian boarding pods launching from the enemy ships. They looked like metal insects, armed with cutting tools and weapons. In a few minutes, they would be burning through the Starbound's hull. Amy, can we move at all? Maybe quarter power. Not enough to run, but enough to make them work for it. Jake made a decision. Pete, forget the engines for now. I need you in Cargo Bay 3. Pete's voice came over the intercom from the engineering section. Captain, Cargo Bay 3 is just medical supplies and... No, it's not, Jake said firmly. Lisa, seal all the internal doors. Emergency lockdown. Lisa's fingers moved over her controls. Heavy metal doors slammed shut throughout the ship, dividing it into separate sections. Lockdown complete. But Captain, what's in Cargo Bay 3? Jake was already moving toward the sealed door that led to the cargo areas. Something I hoped we'd never need to use. The ship shook again as more Vraxian weapons hit them. Through the window, Jake could see the boarding pods getting closer. They had maybe 5 minutes before enemy soldiers started cutting through their hull. Amy, give me ship-wide communications. You're on, Captain. Jake picked up the microphone. "Attention all hands. We are under attack by a superior enemy force. Our engines are damaged and we cannot escape. However, this ship carries more than medical supplies." He paused as another blast shook the ship. Somewhere in the distance, he could hear the sound of metal being cut. The Vraxians were already starting to board. 5 years ago, when this ship was commissioned for humanitarian work, certain modifications were made. The Starbound carries experimental military equipment being transported to a research facility. That equipment is now activated under emergency protocols. Pete's voice came over the intercom. "Captain, I'm in Cargo Bay 3. What am I looking for?" "Section 7, behind the water purification supplies. There should be a panel marked with Terran military codes." There was a pause. Then Pete's voice came back, and he sounded amazed. "Captain, there's enough firepower in here to level a city." Jake smiled grimly. "That's not all. Amy, check your navigation computer for military protocols. Authorization, Code 77 Alpha 9. Amy's fingers flew over her controls. Suddenly, her display changed, showing information that definitely hadn't been there before. "Captain, these aren't cargo ship systems. This is military-grade navigation, targeting, and tactical analysis. The Starbound was built in a military shipyard," Jake explained as he worked to open the sealed cargo bay. "On paper, she's a converted cargo vessel. In reality, she's a prototype stealth military transport. The humanitarian mission was our cover story." Lisa looked up from her communications panel, which was now showing completely different readouts. "I'm reading advanced communication arrays, military encryption, and... Captain, we have contact with something called Falcon Base." Jake finally got the cargo bay door open. Inside, behind stacks of medical supplies, was equipment that clearly didn't belong on a peaceful cargo ship. Advanced weapon systems, military computers, and what looked like enough ammunition to fight a small war. "Pete, can you get those systems online?" "Already working on it, Captain. But I need help." "These aren't standard cargo ship controls." Amy stood up from her navigation station. "I'll help him. I've seen systems like this before." Jake was surprised. "You have?" "My last job wasn't flying cargo ships," Amy said as she headed toward the cargo bay. "I was a combat pilot before I decided I wanted a quieter life." The ship shook again, and this time Jake could hear the sound of cutting tools getting closer. The Vraxians would be inside in minutes. "Lisa, what about you? Any hidden military experience?" Lisa smiled. "Communications specialist, Terran Navy intelligence. I retired 3 years ago and thought hauling medical supplies would be boring." Jake laughed, despite their situation. "Seems like we all thought the same thing. How's the contact with Falcon Base?" "Strong signal. They're asking for our status and confirming our identity codes." "Tell them we're under attack by a full Vraxian fleet and requesting immediate assistance." There was a loud crash from somewhere in the ship. The Vraxians had cut through the hull and were boarding. "Captain?" Pete's voice came over the intercom. "I've got the weapon systems online, but I need someone to man the targeting computer." Jake looked around the bridge. Amy was helping Pete with the military equipment. Lisa was handling communications, with what he now realized was probably a military base. That left him. "I'll take targeting," Jake said, moving to a control panel that had just activated with military displays. "Captain," Lisa said, "Falcon Base is asking about our cargo. They want to know if the special equipment is secure. Tell them the cargo is secure, and we're preparing to defend it." Jake's hands moved over the targeting controls, and he felt muscle memory taking over. It had been years since he'd operated military systems, but some things you never forgot. The Starbound might look like an old cargo ship, but her weapons were state-of-the-art. The main display showed 12 Vraxian ships surrounding them. On a fair day, with proper support, Jake might have been confident about fighting 3 or 4 of them. 12 was suicide. But sometimes you fought anyway. "Weapons ready," Pete reported. "Targeting computer online," Jake confirmed. "Communications with Falcon Base established," Lisa added. Amy's voice came over the intercom from the cargo bay. "Captain, I've found something else down here. Emergency military transponder. If I activate it, every friendly ship in 3 systems will know exactly where we are and what we're carrying." Jake thought about it for exactly 2 seconds. "Do it." Transponder activated. "And Captain? According to these readouts, Falcon Base isn't the only one who knows about our cargo. This stuff is important enough that somebody's been tracking us the whole time." Through the bridge window, Jake could see Vraxian soldiers in spacesuits cutting through the outer hull. They moved with military precision, but they were taking their time. They thought they were boarding a helpless cargo ship. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "All hands," Jake said into the ship-wide communication system. "Prepare for combat. We're not going down without a fight." Admiral Susan Hayes was reviewing training reports when the emergency message came through. She was a small woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles, commanding one of the most powerful ships in the human fleet from the bridge of the battlecruiser Iron Eagle. "Admiral, we're receiving a priority distress signal," reported Lieutenant Commander Rick Barnes from the communication station. "It's a Code 7 emergency." Susan looked up sharply. Code 7 meant an attack on a humanitarian vessel. Such attacks were rare, and they always demanded immediate response. "Put it through." The message was clear and desperate. A human cargo ship carrying medical supplies was under attack by a Vraxian fleet. The ship's captain was requesting immediate assistance and warning of a larger military buildup in the area. "Navigation. What's our distance to the Kepler system?" Susan asked. 2.7 light-years, Admiral. We could be there in 45 minutes at maximum speed." Susan studied the tactical display. The Iron Eagle was conducting training exercises with 2 other ships, running combat drills in empty space. The exercises could wait. All ships. Emergency. Course change. Set course for the Kepler system. Maximum military speed. This is not a drill. The massive battlecruiser changed direction, its engines pushing it toward the distant star system where someone was attacking a human medical ship. Susan had served in the military for 30 years, and she had never gotten used to the idea of pirates attacking humanitarian vessels. "Communications. Get me a direct line to the ship under attack." "Trying, Admiral, but there's a lot of interference. The attacking fleet appears to be jamming communications." Susan frowned. Pirates usually didn't have that kind of equipment. "Can you identify the ship being attacked?" Lieutenant Commander Barnes worked at his controls for several minutes. "It's the cargo vessel Starbound, Admiral. Captain Jake Morrison commanding." The name was familiar. Susan accessed the ship's database and found the service record she was looking for. Jake Morrison had served in the Terran Navy for 15 years before retiring to civilian cargo work. He had been a good officer, the kind who never complained and always got the job done. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the sensor station. "I'm reading weapons fire in the target system. Multiple ships engaged in combat." "How many ships?" "At least 12, possibly more. The energy signature suggests heavy military weapons." Susan felt cold anger building in her chest. 12 ships attacking one cargo vessel wasn't piracy, it was murder. "Engineering, I need every bit of speed you can give me." Already pushing beyond recommended limits, Admiral. We'll be there in 38 minutes. Susan opened a communication channel to the other ships in her small fleet. Attention all vessels. We are responding to an attack on a human humanitarian ship. The enemy force consists of at least 12 military vessels of unknown origin. We will engage immediately upon arrival. The Iron Eagle and her escorts race through space toward the distant battle. Susan used the time to study everything they knew about Vraxian military tactics. The aliens were aggressive and brutal, but they weren't stupid. A 12-ship attack on a single cargo vessel suggested either desperation or something much more. Serious. Admiral, we're close enough for long-range sensors, Lieutenant Kim reported. I'm reading the battle zone now. What do you see? The cargo ship is still intact but heavily damaged. She's surrounded by what appears to be a full Vraxian raider fleet. Wait. Kim paused, studying her instruments. Admiral, that cargo ship is fighting back. She's got military-grade weapons. Susan wasn't entirely surprised. Many cargo ships carried hidden defensive systems, especially those traveling through dangerous areas. But fighting 12 Vraxian warships was suicide. Can we contact them? Trying now, Admiral. A few minutes later, the communication channel crackled to life. Admiral Hayes, this is Captain Morrison. Good to hear a friendly voice. Susan recognized Jake's calm tone, even under fire. Captain, we're en route to your position. What's your status? We're holding for now, but barely. My ship took heavy damage in the initial attack. We're using emergency systems to keep fighting. Understood. We'll be there in 20 minutes. Can you hold that long? There was a pause, and Susan could hear weapons fire in the background. We'll try, Admiral. But Susan, there's something else. This isn't just a pirate attack. The Vraxians have a full fleet here. This looks like preparation for a major assault on human space. Susan felt her blood run cold. How major? 50 ships, maybe more. This whole sector is being used as a staging area. Susan immediately opened a channel to Fleet Command. This is Admiral Hayes aboard the Iron Eagle. We are responding to an emergency code 7, but the situation is much worse than initially reported. I need immediate backup and full authorization to engage a large enemy fleet. The response came back quickly. Admiral, you are authorized to use any force necessary to protect human civilians and prevent an enemy incursion into human space. Susan smiled grimly. That was exactly what she wanted to hear. Captain Morrison, help is on the way, but I need you to hold your position a little longer. We'll do our best, Admiral. Susan could hear the strain in Jake's voice. The Starbound was fighting, a losing battle against overwhelming odds, but she also heard something else: determination. Jake Morrison wasn't the kind of man to give up easily. All ships, prepare for combat. We're going in fast and hard. The Iron Eagle dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system, followed by her 2 escort ships. Susan immediately saw the battle on her tactical display. One small cargo ship surrounded by a fleet of alien warships. Sensors give me a complete count of enemy vessels. 14 ships around the cargo vessel, Admiral, but there are more contacts throughout the system. I'm reading at least 40 additional Vraxian ships. Susan opened a communication channel to the entire enemy fleet. This is Admiral Susan Hayes of the Terran Navy. You are currently attacking a humanitarian vessel in violation of galactic law. You have exactly 10 minutes to withdraw from this system, or we will consider this an act of war against humanity. The response came quickly, in the harsh electronic voice of an alien translator. This is War Commander Zektar. Your threats mean nothing, human. Withdraw or be destroyed. Susan looked around the bridge at her crew. They were all looking at her, waiting for orders. These were good people who had signed up to protect human civilians and maintain peace in the galaxy. All ships, battle stations. We're going to show these pirates what happens when they mess with a human ship. The Iron Eagle moved forward, its massive weapons charging to full power. Behind it, the two escort ships spread out in attack formation. Admiral, Lieutenant Commander Barnes said, "The cargo ship is hailing us." "Put Captain Morrison through." Jake's voice came over the communication system, and he sounded almost cheerful despite his desperate situation. "Admiral, I want you to know that we really appreciate the rescue. But there's something you should know about the Starbound." "What's that, Captain?" "We're not exactly what we appear to be." Susan smiled. She had suspected as much. "Copy that." "Captain, let's show these pirates what human ships can really do." War Commander Zektar watched the human battlecruiser approach on his tactical display and felt something he hadn't experienced in years: doubt. The ship was larger than he had expected, and it was moving with the confident precision of an experienced military crew. "Fleet Commander," his tactical officer reported, "the human vessel is a capital-class battlecruiser, heavy armor, advanced shielding and weapon systems that match our own." Zektar studied the display. One battlecruiser and two escort ships against his entire fleet. The humans were either very brave or very stupid. It makes no difference, he decided. "We outnumber them 4-1. All ships attack formation, destroy the human warships, then finish with the cargo vessel." What Zektar didn't know was that Admiral Hayes had spent her entire career studying alien military tactics. She knew exactly how the Vraxians would respond to her challenge, and she was counting on their overconfidence. "All ships, execute pattern." "Delta 7, Susan ordered. The Iron Eagle and her escorts suddenly changed course, not charging directly at the enemy fleet, but angling toward the damaged cargo ship. To the Vraxians, it looked like the humans were trying to rescue their damaged vessel and escape. "They're running," Zektar's weapons officer reported with satisfaction. "No," Zektar said, studying the human formation more carefully. "They're not running. They're positioning themselves." He was right. Admiral Hayes was using the Starbound as the center of a defensive formation, putting her ships exactly where she wanted them for the coming battle. "Admiral," Captain Morrison's voice came over the communication channel, "we're reading massive energy buildup from the enemy ships. They're preparing for a full fleet assault." "Understood, Captain. Are your systems ready?" "More than ready, Admiral. Pete's got the weapon systems running at 110%, and Amy's found some interesting surprises in our cargo bay." Susan smiled. She had suspected the Starbound was more than a simple cargo ship. Military supply vessels often carried experimental equipment, and their crews usually had more training than they admitted. "All ships, prepare to engage. Remember, we're not just fighting for one cargo ship. We're fighting to prevent an invasion of human space." The Vraxian fleet moved into attack formation, spreading out to surround the human ships. It was a classic tactic: use superior numbers to attack from all directions at once. Against most enemies, it would have been devastating. Against Admiral Susan Hayes, it was exactly what she wanted them to do. "Susan," came Jake's voice over the private command channel, "I need to tell you something about our cargo." "What about it?" "It's not just medical supplies. We're carrying prototype military equipment to a research facility. Some of it is very advanced." Susan felt a cold chill. Prototype military equipment in the hands of the Vraxians could shift the balance of power in the entire galaxy. How advanced? Advanced enough that we were being escorted by stealth ships we didn't know about. Amy found their transponder codes in our navigation computer. Susan immediately checked her long-range sensors. At first, she saw nothing, but when she adjusted for stealth signatures, she found them. 3 ships hiding just beyond the edge of the system. "Captain, are those ships friendly?" "Very friendly. And they've been waiting for us to activate the emergency beacon." Susan opened her communication channel to include the stealth ships. "Unidentified vessels. This is Admiral Hayes. Please identify yourselves." The response came immediately. "Admiral, this is Captain David Lee aboard the stealth cruiser Ghost Runner. We've been assigned to protect the Starbound's cargo, requesting permission to engage the enemy. 3 stealth ships against a Vraxian fleet would have been suicide an hour ago. But now, with the Iron Eagle and her escorts providing cover, the odds were much more even. Permission granted. All ships coordinate attack pattern Omega-3. The battle began with devastating suddenness. The Vraxians opened fire with everything they had, expecting to overwhelm the human ships with sheer firepower. What they got, instead, was a carefully planned counterattack that hit them from directions they hadn't expected. The Iron Eagle's main guns spoke first, sending plasma bolts across space that struck the largest Vraxian ship with enough force to crack its armor. The 2 escort ships targeted the enemy flanks, while the 3 stealth ships appeared out of nowhere to attack from behind. But the biggest surprise came from the Starbound herself. "Admiral," Captain Morrison's voice came over the communication channel. "We're ready to show these pirates what a human cargo ship can really do." The damaged cargo vessel suddenly erupted with weapons fire that no civilian ship should have possessed. Advanced particle beams, guided missiles, and defensive systems that could have belonged to a military cruiser. "Captain, what exactly are you carrying in that cargo bay?" Susan asked. "Next-generation military technology," Jake replied as his ship's weapons tore through Vraxian armor, "including some things that aren't supposed to exist yet." War Commander Zektar watched his tactical display with growing horror as his fleet took devastating losses. The humans weren't just fighting. Back, they were winning. His ships were being destroyed by weapons and tactics he had never seen before. "Fleet Commander!" his tactical officer shouted. "The cargo ship has military-grade shielding. Our weapons aren't penetrating. Impossible. It's a civilian vessel." "Not anymore, sir. I'm reading energy signatures that match a heavy cruiser." Zektar realized he had made a terrible mistake. The humans hadn't just sent a rescue mission, they had turned this entire battle into a trap. The helpless cargo ship was bait, and his fleet had taken it completely. "All ships, retreat to minimum safe distance. Regroup for—" His order was cut off as the Iron Eagle's main guns found his command ship. The massive blast tore through his shields and armor, sending his vessel spinning out of control. Admiral Hayes watched the enemy fleet scatter and felt grim satisfaction. The Vraxians had expected to find weak humans they could bully and rob. Instead, they had found exactly what humanity had spent centuries becoming, the most dangerous species in the galaxy when threatened. "All ships, pursue and engage. Don't let them regroup." The battle had turned into a rout. Human ships chased fleeing Vraxians across the system, destroying any vessel that didn't surrender immediately. The aliens had learned too late that attacking a human ship, any human ship, was the last mistake they would ever make. "Captain Morrison," Susan said over the communication channel, "remind me never to accept a ride on one of your cargo ships." Jake's laughter came back over the radio. "Admiral, this is probably the most excitement we've had since we started hauling medical supplies." "Well, you certainly know how to make it interesting." The Vraxian fleet was broken. Their invasion plans were ruined, and they had learned a lesson. that would spread throughout the galaxy. Humans might prefer peace, but they were very, very good at war. The battle that followed was unlike anything the Vraxians had ever experienced. They had built their reputation on overwhelming weaker species with superior numbers and brutality. They had never faced an enemy that turned their own tactics against them with deadly precision. Admiral Hayes coordinated the attack from the bridge of the Iron Eagle, her voice calm and professional as she directed a symphony of destruction. Ghost Runner, target their command structure. Eagle 2 and 3 hit their flanks. Starbound, provide covering fire for the stealth ships. War Commander Zektar's fleet had been caught completely off guard. His ships were designed for raids, against cargo vessels and lightly defended colonies, not for fighting experienced military crews with advanced weapons. Within minutes, 3 of his largest vessels were drifting in space, their hulls torn open by human weapons fire. "Admiral," reported Lieutenant Kim from the sensor station, "the enemy is trying to regroup behind that large asteroid field." Susan studied the tactical display. The Vraxians were using a classic defensive formation, but they had made a critical error. They were thinking like pirates instead of soldiers. "All ships, execute flanking maneuver 7. Use the asteroid field to mask our approach." The human ships split up, moving around the asteroid field from multiple directions. The Vraxians found themselves surrounded again, this time with no escape route. Captain Morrison's voice came over the communication channel from the Starbound. "Admiral, we've got something interesting down here. Pete found advanced targeting. Computers in our cargo. Want to see what they can do?" "Show me, Captain." The Starbound's weapons suddenly became frighteningly accurate. Every shot found its target, penetrating Vraxian shields as if they weren't there. The experimental targeting system was reading alien ship designs in real time and finding weak points that human gunners would never have spotted. "Captain, what exactly are you carrying in that cargo bay?" Admiral Hayes asked. "Next-generation warfare technology," Jake replied as his ship destroyed another Vraxian cruiser. Amy found the technical specifications. "This stuff is at least 10 years ahead of anything currently deployed." War Commander Zektar watched his fleet being systematically destroyed and felt something he had never experienced before: genuine fear. The humans weren't just winning the battle, they were making it look easy. "All ships, emergency retreat," he ordered. "Jump to hyperspace immediately." But Admiral Hayes had anticipated this move. "Ghost Runner, target their hyperspace engines. Don't let any of them escape." The stealth ships had positioned themselves perfectly to cut off the Vraxian retreat. Advanced human weapons reached out across space to disable enemy ships before they could jump away. One by one, the alien vessels found themselves trapped in normal space with nowhere to run. "Fleet Commander," Zektar's tactical officer reported, with panic in his voice, "we've lost hyperspace capability. The humans have some kind of weapon that's targeting our jump drives specifically." Zektar stared at his display in disbelief. The humans had technology that could disable hyperspace engines without destroying the ship. Such weapons were theoretically possible, but required an understanding of physics that few species possessed. "Admiral Hayes," came a transmission from one of the damaged Vraxian ships. "This is Captain Vectar of the cruiser Bloodstrike. We request terms for surrender." Susan looked around the bridge at her crew. They had fought brilliantly, but she could see the cost of battle in their faces. War was never easy, even when you were winning. "Captain Vectar, you and your crew will surrender all weapons and submit to boarding by human marines. Any resistance will result in the destruction of your vessel." "Understood, Admiral. We surrender." One by one, the surviving Vraxian ships followed suit. Out of the original 50-ship fleet, only 12 vessels remained intact, and all of them were now prisoners of the human fleet. But War Commander Zektar was not finished. His command ship was badly damaged, but still capable of fighting, and he had one last desperate plan. Tactical officer, target the human cargo ship. All remaining weapons, maximum power. Sir, that would violate the surrender. Do it now! The Vraxian command ship turned toward the Starbound and opened fire with everything it had left. Plasma bolts and missiles streaked across space toward the damaged cargo vessel. Captain Morrison saw the attack coming and reacted instantly. All hands, brace for impact. Amy, emergency evasive maneuvers. The Starbound twisted away from the incoming fire, but the ship was too damaged to avoid everything. Several plasma bolts struck the hull, and the ship shuddered under the impact. "Hull breach in Section 4, Pete reported. "We're losing atmosphere." Admiral Hayes watched the treacherous attack with cold fury. "All ships, target the Vraxian. Command vessel, destroy it immediately." The Iron Eagle's main guns spoke with devastating force. The massive energy beams struck Zektar's ship and tore it apart in a brilliant flash of light. The war commander who had attacked a human medical ship learned too late that some actions have consequences that cannot be avoided. "Captain Morrison, report your status," Susan called. Jake's voice came back, strained but steady. "We're still here, Admiral, damaged but functional. Pete's already working on the hull breach." "Any casualties?" "None. But, Admiral, I think we need to have a serious talk about what we're really carrying down here." Susan understood. The battle had revealed capabilities that were supposed to remain secret. The Starbound's cargo included military technology that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. "Agreed, Captain. As soon as we finish cleaning up this mess." The surviving Vraxian ships were secured by human marines, their crews taken prisoner and their vessels impounded. The alien invasion force that had threatened human space was now nothing but scrap metal and prisoners of war. Lieutenant Commander Barnes looked up from his communication station. "Admiral, we're receiving messages from Council headquarters. They want a full report on what happened here." Susan nodded. The battle was over, but the consequences were just beginning. The galaxy would soon learn that attacking human ships, even seemingly helpless cargo vessels, was a mistake that few species would survive. "Send a message to Fleet Command," she ordered. "Tell them the Vraxian threat has been neutralized, and remind them that the cargo aboard the Starbound needs to be secured immediately." She looked out at the debris field that had once been an alien invasion fleet. War Commander Zektar had ignored the warnings, attacked a human medical ship, and learned why that was the last mistake his species would ever make. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson that would echo across the stars. Humanity preferred peace, but they were very, very good at war. In the aftermath of the battle, space around the Kepler system was filled with the wreckage of what had once been a mighty Vraxian fleet. 50 ships had entered the system with plans to attack human colonies. Only 8 damaged vessels remained, their crews now prisoners aboard human ships. Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge of the Iron Eagle, watching salvage teams work to recover survivors from the destroyed vessels. Even in war, humans tried to save lives when possible. It was part of what made them different from species like the Vraxians. "Admiral," Lieutenant Commander Barnes reported, "we've completed interrogation of the surviving Vraxian officers. The intelligence is significant." Susan walked over to the intelligence station. "What did you learn?" This wasn't just a raiding operation. The Vraxians were planning a full-scale invasion of human space. They had identified 12 colony worlds as primary targets and were preparing to attack them simultaneously. Susan felt cold anger building in her chest. 12 colony worlds meant millions of human civilians, including families with children who had never done anything to threaten the Vraxians. What changed their plans? According to their records, they believed humans were weak and disorganized. Their intelligence suggested that human military forces were spread too thin to respond to multiple attacks. Susan almost laughed. The Vraxians had made the same mistake that many alien species made. They confused humanity's preference for peace with an inability to fight effectively. They also believed, Barnes continued, that attacking a single cargo ship would test human response capabilities without triggering a major military reaction. Instead, they triggered exactly the kind of response they weren't prepared for, Susan said. What else? The cargo aboard the Starbound was their secondary target. They knew it contained advanced military technology and planned to capture it for study. Susan looked out at the damaged cargo ship, where Captain Morrison and his crew were still working to repair their vessel. They had no idea how close they had come to losing technology that could have given the Vraxians a significant military advantage. Captain Morrison is requesting permission to complete his original mission, Barnes added. Susan opened a communication channel to the Starbound. Captain, are you sure your ship is safe for travel? Jake's voice came back, tired but determined. Pete says we're spaceworthy, Admiral. The hull breach is sealed, and our engines are running at about 80%. More importantly, there are still colony worlds waiting for the medical supplies we're carrying. Susan admired his dedication, but she had other concerns. Captain, your cargo isn't just medical supplies. That military equipment needs to be secured. Already taken care of, Admiral. The stealth ships have transferred the classified materials to their vessels. All we have left is medicine, food, and water purification tablets. In that case, you have permission to complete your mission. But, Captain... Yes, Admiral? Next time. You're hauling secret military equipment. Maybe warn your escort fleet ahead of time. Jake's laughter came over the communication channel. Will do, Admiral. And Susan, thanks for the rescue. Thanks for holding out long enough for us to arrive. As the Starbound limped away toward the outer colonies, Admiral Hayes prepared her report for Fleet Command. The battle had revealed several important facts that would change human military policy throughout the galaxy. First, the Vraxians had been planning a major invasion based on faulty intelligence about human capabilities. Their defeat would send a clear message to other hostile species that humanity was not as vulnerable as it appeared. Second, the experimental military technology aboard the Starbound had performed beyond expectations. The advanced targeting systems and weapons had given human forces a significant advantage that could be deployed fleet-wide. Most importantly, the battle had demonstrated something that Admiral Hayes had always believed, that attacking human civilians was the fastest way to discover why Earth had survived 10,000 years of warfare. Communications, she ordered. Open a channel to all Council member species. Priority Alpha transmission. Channel open, Admiral. Susan looked directly into the camera that would broadcast her message across known space. This is Admiral Susan Hayes of the Terran Navy. 3 hours ago, a Vraxian fleet attacked a human humanitarian vessel carrying medical supplies to colony worlds. The attack was unprovoked and violated 17 galactic treaties. She paused, letting her words carry the weight of official military communication. The attacking fleet consisted of 50 military vessels planning a coordinated invasion of human space. That fleet no longer exists. 8 ships survived and surrendered. 42 ships were destroyed when they ignored diplomatic warnings and continued their attack on human civilians. Admiral Hayes could picture the reaction her message would cause in alien governments throughout the galaxy. Some would be shocked by the scale of the Vraxian defeat. Others would be taking careful notes about human military capabilities. Let this serve as a reminder to all species who might consider similar actions. Humanity came to the stars seeking peace, trade, and cooperation. We prefer diplomatic solutions to military ones. We believe in protecting the weak and helping those in need. She stepped closer to the camera, her voice becoming harder. But we also believe in defending our people and our values. We have spent centuries perfecting the tools of war, even as we hoped never to use them. Attack our innocent, threaten our colonies, ignore our warnings, and you will discover why Earth survived when so many other worlds did not. The message would be broadcast to every major government in the galaxy within hours. Some alien leaders would dismiss it as human bragging. Others would look at the wreckage of the Vraxian fleet and start reconsidering their own military policies. Admiral, Lieutenant Kim reported from the sensor station. We're picking up ships approaching from multiple directions. Looks like other species want to see what happened here. Susan nodded. Word of the battle would spread quickly, and every government in the galaxy would want to examine the battlefield for themselves. They would find the wreckage of a fleet that had believed humans were weak and easy targets. They would learn that the most dangerous enemies were often those who preferred peace but excelled at war. Days later, in the outer colonies, Captain Morrison and his crew delivered their medical supplies to grateful families who had been waiting months for medicine and clean water. Children who had been sick became healthy. Injured workers returned to their jobs. Life continued because 4 humans on an old cargo ship had refused to surrender to bullies. The galaxy was a different place now. The Vraxian threat was gone, and other hostile species were reconsidering their own plans for expansion. Humanity's reputation for peaceful intentions remained intact, but now it came with an unspoken promise. Cross the line, ignore the warnings, attack the innocent, and discover the price of ignorance. It was a lesson written in the wreckage of 50 alien warships, and it would be remembered for generations to come.